Chapter 12. Jolly Sailor. There was sand around her, and white waves crashing, and water draining off the shingle and sounding like an old woman sucking a hard mint. "Crivens, where are we noo?" said Daft Willie. "Aye, and why are we all looking like yellow mushrooms?" Rob Anybody added. Tiffany looked down and giggled. Every pixie was wearing a Jolly Sailor outfit, with an oilskin coat and a huge yellow oilskin rain hat, and that covered most of their faces. They started to wander about, bumping into one another. "My dream," Tiffany thought. "The drone uses what it can find in your head, but this is my dream. I can use it." Wentworth had gone quiet. He was staring at the waves. There was a boat pulled up on the shingle. As one pixie, or small yellow mushroom, the Knack-Mack Feegle, were flocking towards it and clambering up the sides. "What are you doing?" said Tiffany. "Best if we was leaving," said Rob Anybody. "That's a good dream you found us, but we cannae stay here." "But we should be safe here." "Ach, the Queen finds a way in everywhere," said Rob, as 100 pixies raised an oar. "Dinna fash yourself. We know all about boats. Did you no see not totally wee Georgie pike fishing wee Bobby in the stream the other day? We is no strangers to the pictorial and nautical arts, ye ken." And they did indeed seem to know about boats. The oars were heaved into the rowlocks, and a party of Feegles pushed it down the stones and into the waves. "Now you just hand us the wee bairn," shouted Rob Anybody from the stern. Uncertainly, her feet slipping on the wet stones, Tiffany waded through the cold water and handed Wentworth over. He seemed to think it was very funny. Wee mens," he yelled as they lowered him into the boat. It was his only joke, so he wasn't going to stop. "Aye, that's right," said Rob Anybody, tucking him under the seat. "Noo just you bide there like a good boy, and no yelling for sweeties, or Uncle Rob will give ye a skelping across the ear-hole, OK?" Wentworth chuckled. Tiffany ran back up the beach and hauled Roland to his feet. He opened his eyes and looked blearily at her. "What's happening?" he said. "I had this strange dream," and then he shut his eyes again and sagged. "Get in the boat," Tiffany shouted, dragging him across the shingle. "Crivens, are we taking this wee streak of uselessness?" said Rob, grabbing Roland's trousers and heaving him aboard. "Of course." Tiffany hauled herself in afterwards and landed in the bottom of the boat as a wave took it. The oars creaked and splashed, and the boat jerked forward. It jolted once or twice as more waves hit it, and then began to plunge across the sea. The pixies were strong after all, even though each oar was a battleground as pixies hung from it, or piled up on one another's shoulders, or just heaved anything they could grasp. Both oars were almost bending as they were dragged through the water. Tiffany picked herself up and tried to ignore the sudden, uncertain feeling in her stomach. "Head for the lighthouse," she said. "Aye, I can that," said Rob Anybody. "It's the only place there is, and the Queen Disney light." He grinned. "It's a good dream, lady. Have you no looked at the sky?" "It's just a blue sky," said Tiffany. "It's not exactly a sky," said Rob Anybody. "Look behind ye." Tiffany turned. It was a blue sky, very blue, but above the retreating beach, halfway up the sky, was a band of yellow. It looked a long way away and hundreds of miles across, and in the middle of it, looming over the world as big as a galaxy and grey-blue with distance, was a lifebelt. On it, but spelled backwards, in letters larger than the moon, were the words, Jolly Sailor. "We're in the label," said Tiffany. "Aye," said Rob Anybody. "But the sea feels real. It's salty and wet and cold. It's not like paint." "I didn't dream it's salty or so cold." "You kidding? Then it's a picture on the outside and it's real on the inside." Rob nodded. "You ken, we've been robbing and running around on all kinds of worlds for a long time, and I'll tell you this. The universe is a lot more complicated than it looks from the outside." Tiffany took the grubby label out of her pocket and stared at it again. There was the lifebelt and the lighthouse, but the jolly sailor himself wasn't there. What was there? So tiny as to be little bigger than a dot on the printed sea was a tiny rowing boat. She looked up. There were storm clouds in the sky. In front of the huge hazy lifebelt, they were long and ragged, curling as they came. Didn't it take a long to find a way in? Muttered William. No, said Tiffany, but this is my dream. I know how it goes. Keep rowing. Tangling and tumbling, some of the clouds passed overhead and then swooped towards the sea. They vanished beneath the waves like a waterspout in reverse. It began to rain, hard, so hard that a haze of mist rose over the sea. Is that it? Tiffany wondered. Is that all she can do? I'll do it, said Rob Anybody. Bend them oars, lads. The boat shot forward, bouncing through the rain from wave top to wave top. But against all normal rules, it was now trying to go uphill. The water was mounding up, and the boat washed backwards in the streaming surf. Something was rising, something white was pushing the seas aside. Great waterfalls poured off the shining dome that climbed towards the storm sky. It rose higher, and still there was more, and eventually there was an eye. It was tiny compared to the mountainous head above it, and it rolled in its socket and focused on the tiny boat. "Now that's a head that'd be a day's work even for Big Jan," said Rob Anybody. "I reckon we'd have to come back tomorrow. Row, boys!" "It's a dream of mine," said Tiffany, as calmly as she could manage. "It's the whale fish." "I never dreamed the smell, though," she added to herself. But here it is, a huge solid world-filling smell of salt and water and fish and ooze. "What does it eat?" Daft Willie asked. "Ah, I know that," said Tiffany, as the boat rocked on the swell. "Whales aren't dangerous because they just eat very small things." "Row like the blazes, lads!" Rob Anybody yelled. "How'd you ken it only eats wee stuff?" said Daft Willie, as the whale's fish mouth began to open. "I paid a whole cucumber once for a lesson on beasts of the deep," said Tiffany, as a wave washed over them. "Whales don't even have proper teeth." There was a creaking sound and a gust of fishy halitosis about the size of a typhoon, and the view was full of enormous pointy teeth. "Aye," said Willie. "Well, no offence meant, but I didn't think this beastie went to the same school as ye." The surge of water was pushing them away, and Tiffany could see the whole of the head now, and in a way she couldn't possibly describe. The whale looked like the Queen. The Queen was there, somewhere. The anger came back. "This is my dream," she shouted at the sky. "I've dreamed it dozens of times. You're not allowed in here. Whales don't eat people. Everyone who isn't very stupid knows that." A tail the size of a field rose and slapped down on the sea. The whale shot forward. Rob Anybody threw off his yellow hat and drew his sword. Well, we tried," he said. "This wee beast is going to get the worst bellyache there ever was." "Aye, we'll cut a way out," shouted Daft Willie. "No, keep rowing," said Tiffany. "That's ne'er been said that the Knack MacFeegle turn their back on a foe," Rob yelled. "But you're rowing facing backwards," Tiffany pointed out. The pixie looked crestfallen. "Oh, I hadn't thought of it like that," he said, sitting down again. "Just row," Tiffany insisted. "We're nearly at the lighthouse." Grumbling because even if they were facing the right way, they were still going the wrong way, the pixies hauled on the oars. "That's a great big head he's got there, you ken," said Rob Anybody. "How big would you say that head is, Gonigal?"